Mount West Hoops Insider, here we are. This will be a fun episode. We'll get kind of straight to the point. We won't get as much player coverage because we're going to have players of the week next week, but we'll do some of our player coverage within our team coverage. And, yeah, just kind of talk some general stuff, talk some of the games that have happened, also talk some of the upcoming games, and just try to get straight to it in a sprint today. Overall thoughts on the league to start the show today. Your thoughts are we've had some big wins, so I'll just kind of recap a little bit. We had the two first teams play in Wyoming, along with Boise State in a big time, high level competitive game that Boise won at home down the stretch. Then you have Utah State was able to take advantage of their home court advantage last night against San Diego State. So they're starting to get back in the flow, and hopefully they're getting healthy. I think a full-strength Utah State team is a much different team. You take two starters off anybody's team, it's going to affect you. Wyoming has had Xavier Ducella, who's a starter. He's now going to be back in the fold. Fresno State is starting to play really good basketball again. They took a loss there in the middle, and they play Boise upcoming, so that's going to be a big one. And then off the top of my head, Colorado State is also playing some high-level basketball. And shout out to Air Force. They are too. I know I just kind of went around the league. Air Force got a big win against UNLV. They also got a big win against San Jose. So Air Force is playing some very good basketball as well. New Mexico still playing well. They just have not quite been able to turn the corner, but I think that's coming for them as their schedule. They played some of the tougher teams in the league too. So, yeah, the league is tough. Leon Rice said this after the game against Wyoming. This league has been very good, but he's like, I don't know if it's been this good in a while, where every single night you really are in for an extreme fight. So, anyway, passing over to Eli. He's the expert on this league. Ready, set, go.
Well, hey, you bring quite a bit to the table yourself. I think my abstract look at the league right now, particularly after Wednesday night with Utah State beating San Diego State pretty handily, there are pros and cons with the league being this deep and this strong. And I think the pros are that we currently have, if I'm not mistaken, 6 teams in the top 70, 75 in net, still including Utah State, which started 1-5 in conference play. Looking at it right now, it looks like 6 teams that are in the top 62 in net, with Utah State being at 62nd. So that's the good thing here. The not so good thing, or I guess the challenge, as far as the goal being as many bids as possible for the NCAA tournament, I think the challenge is like Wednesday night when San Diego State can have a trip up against a Utah State team that I think, given their losses, probably isn't going to be in the at-large mix come Selection Sunday. I think they're probably going to have to get it done in the Mountain West tournament, just based on how this works. But it's tough because you have your 5 or so competitors for the at-large bids, but those 5 can very easily lose games to teams that are placed 6 through 11 in the conference. You mentioned New Mexico and Air Force. Those are teams. New Mexico hasn't won a league game yet, but they have been extremely close. They played CSU tight. They have proven that it's hard to look at them and say that they're an 0-17. It's not really the feel of an 0-17 given what they've shown on the court. But it's going to be a challenge as far as bids are concerned, because there's so many teams that are in that conversation, and the Mountain West is such a home crowd driven league. The environments that are so challenging to play, Viejas, the Pit, Boise's proven to be a tough place to play. Just throughout the league, or even going up to Wyoming and Colorado State, going to Air Force has proven to be a hiccup for a lot of teams. It's tough to go on the road and win games, but I will say, with the way that the net team sheets work and the way the quadrant system is set up, top 75 teams, if you play them on the road, that's a quad 1 result. And so those are like golden tickets. Like, if you get one of those next to your name, that's a huge deal. So
yeah, let's talk about that real quick.
Yeah.
So for those that don't maybe fully understand, which most basketball fans do, but let's just say if somebody didn't, quad 1 meaning the top quad of college basketball, those that strength of playing a team that's a quad one game gives you higher points for the net system, essentially. Mm-hmm. So strength of schedule wise, it counts in a big way. So even if you lose that game, a quad one loss is a super high quality loss as far as how the metrics are broken down. So I think the thing within this conference, so you said top 80? Is that what you said?
Top 75, I believe.
Top 75. So Utah State is right outside of the top 75, but I believe as they keep going, they will jump in. So you ultimately probably have 6 teams in this league that are right. There are 5 that are in it, top 75, and there's one right outside of it in Utah State.
They're at 62 now. They're in that window now. Yeah.
I was gonna say probably after that win last night, they definitely are. So so you look at that equation, you have 6 teams in the Mountain West that are all in that equation. So it makes it where, and I heard shout out to Sam Jacobson. I believe that was him on the Utah State, San Diego State call. Former player at Stanford. I was a fan back in the day. He was a good player. Believe he played in the league, if I'm not mistaken, big time shooter. But anyway, he talked about how many teams they thought were going to get in. And I think that's the conversation everybody's kind of swirling around, is how many teams do you think can get in? So you have 6 in that quad conversation, top 75. I think the question is, there should be 2 teams get in for sure. It feels like 3, but could it be 4? So what does that mean? So it means for people watching, for those that kind of understand this or those that don't, that there's an opportunity for, even if you don't win conference and even if you don't win the conference tournament, to still get an at-large bid, because the conference is so strong and because the net ranking that your individual team may have is so strong. So how you finish games, winning against the teams you should beat. No offense to the teams that are in the bottom of this league right now. San Jose, Air Force is trending upward. They're playing well, but they would still be considered that, even though they're 3 and 4. UNLV, anyone outside of that top 6. So Nevada, San Diego State, Fresno State, Wyoming, Colorado State, Boise State. If you're in that 6 and you get a loss, it's not going to hurt you the same way. But if you lose to one of the teams that are not in that conversation, it really hurts your net, and it can hurt your opportunity to go dancing with an at-large bid, right? Because obviously automatic bid will be, if Colorado State does what they've been doing and they stay in the top 25, that's been the form in this conference, they will get in. That's how it's worked in this conference. Nevada had their run, they did it. San Diego State had their run, they did it. And now it's Colorado State's turn. So as long as they continue to stay in the top 25, they should be a team that's in. The question is, and then if somebody else wins the tournament that's not them, they will be in. So that gives you 2 teams. Let's just say if Colorado State doesn't win and they do stay in the top 25. So it's now who has the biggest strength of schedule resume to get the at-large. And then you have basically 4 other teams that could get one, and hopefully there's 2. So I just want to explain that, because the wins in that top quadrant, that quad 1, really help you a lot. The losses still are valuable, very, very valuable, but the losses outside of that will hurt you. And in the conference tournament, similar to last year, there was 4 teams last year: San Diego State, Utah State, Boise State, and Colorado State. There were the 4 teams that could have gotten in last year. They were all on the bubble. 2 only got in. The other 2 went to the NIT. The strength of the net schedule for per team wasn't as high as it is now, and the strength within the league wasn't as high, although it was high. So with the power conferences and Mountain West being considered a power conference by the net right now, it does help the value. So anyway, I wanted to jump in just to explain that, because I think that's really important for people to understand as you continue to watch Mountain West play. The matchups of who you're playing, who you beat, and who you lose to is really going to matter, And obviously, there's always this asterisk, even though the league is really high at the top. So it's hard to think that a 3 and 4 team, whether you're Air Force, UNLV, San Jose State, or New Mexico that you're going to win the tournament, but you got to keep that, you got to keep that hope alive that they can get hot and do that. So that's always an asterisk for them, but they're not in the at-large conversation.
Yeah, no, that's a great breakdown. I think the other thing worth mentioning too is with that quad one being, if you play a team on the road and they're top 75, it falls in the quadrant one, and if you play a top 30 team at home, it's a quadrant one result. So that's why for Wyoming, for example, against Boise State, that's a massive opportunity because for them, that would be a quad one win that they just came up short. It was a closely contested game. I think both teams certainly proved their worth in that one.
Right.
But those games between those, say, 5 or 6 teams that are in that mix, those are the huge ones because if one of the teams picks up an away win, that's automatically going into that quadrant one bucket, and that definitely stands out to the selection committee of the teams that they choose. So I think protecting home court is going to be a really big deal for a lot of these teams that are up top. And as always, the margin of error is so slim. It's slim in the high major leagues, but it's even slimmer in the mid-major leagues because we know that the teams that are 6 through 11 are still good in this league. But if you are a San Diego State team that might be on the bubble, our most recent bracketology projection had Boise State and Wyoming right in that first 4 mix, right on that bubble. If they lose a game to New Mexico or Air Force or San Jose State, that hurts. There's no other way to put it. That really hurts, and you have to make up for that by winning other big games. So it's good that the Mountain West has this many teams in the mix. It's only good for them as far as marketing and getting their name out there and putting eyes in front of the selection committee. But it's a slim margin of error, and you know that as well as anyone.
Yeah, slim margin of error, and I think that's the part as a fan or even as a supporter or as whoever you are, a follower, college basketball is really hard. And I haven't talked about that in a while on any of these. And to win one game, like I was able to blessed to broadcast the New Mexico-Wyoming game. Close game, down to the wire. They don't have EK playing. New Mexico, it was not New Mexico. It was San Jose. New Mexico was the women, San Jose played Wyoming, and it was a tie game with maybe 5 minutes to go, and Wyoming was up as much as 17. San Jose fought back. All these teams in this league are competitive, but if you lose that game, it doesn't mean your season's over. It just means that's a monumental loss that is sometimes hard to recover from a number standpoint. Your team may still do well, but it's almost like the BCS calculations, if you will. That's probably the best analogy to give. To be in that first 4, the numbers have to add up BCS-wise. So if you have a loss that's a bad loss, or if you lose late in the season, it kind of hurts you if it's not the right team, right? But if you lose to a really elite team, then you can still recover sometimes. But one team I haven't talked about is Nevada. So excuse me, Nevada and Nevada fans or whoever, just Nevada period, staff, players. A talented team. They're right in the middle of the pack. They're not in that top 6. They don't have the same net. They still have a talented squad that can get hot too. So I don't want to leave anyone out of this conversation. But there is a specific, like you talked about this, Boise State went and got a win at San Diego State.
Yeah, huge.
They weren't in the top 30. They were close, but that's a huge, huge win for them. All right, let's talk about some of the upcoming games. So the 2 hottest teams, let's give them their due. The 2 hottest teams in the league, Boise State, unbelievable. They have 13 wins in a row. The second year in a row, they have 13 wins in a row. Got to give huge credit to Leon Rice leading the way. Got to give huge credit to their entire staff. We had RJ Barsh on earlier this week. But kind of the way that I understand it, Coach Duryea coaches the offense. Coach Burns coaches the defense, and Leon Rice is the architect of the whole thing, and RJ Barsh is elite at his player development and player connection and all the things he does to support whatever roles that they have him to do. But got to give them huge credit to win 13 games in a row, 2 years in a row. This year's team's a little bit different. I was impressed with their physicality. Obviously, we know they can defend. they just have an older team. They have an older team, a physical team, a team is full of a lot of transfers, a lot of high major transfers. So they have the talent, they have the physicality. They're not a scoring outburst team, but man, they just find a way to win. You can tell they're together. You can tell different guys step up. Yeah, you just can talk about this team. And then secondly, Colorado State had their pause, came back and had an ugly loss, although it wasn't as ugly as the score says against San Diego State. But they're on fire right now, playing elite level basketball. They've won 4 in a row. So the exciting thing for next week, and I hate to jump ahead of the games this week because there's games every single day, but Fresno and Boise, that's a big one.
Yes, huge.
Huge game. Utah State got their big win last night. Another huge game that's coming next week, just back-to-back days. San Diego State, Colorado State, the rematch in Fort Collins, and then Boise and Wyoming rematch in Laramie. So those are some big games as well. I feel like I'm leaving somebody out. Those are the ones that come to mind. So anyway, 2 hottest teams, Colorado State, Boise. Let's talk about them for a quick second. And then we'll get some final thoughts and wrap up.
Yeah, well, with Davidson's surprising loss to VCU last night, I believe it's Auburn and Boise State, the number 1 team in the country, and now the number 1 team in the Mountain West that have the longest winning streaks in the sport right now. And for Boise State to win 13 games in a row for the second year in a row, that's crazy. You don't hear those types of things, especially when the league is as good as it's ever been or as deep as it's ever been. But you nailed it with the staff and their involvement as far as Boise State is concerned. Top 10 defense. We have 2 top 10 defenses nationally coming out of the Mountain West with both San Diego State and Boise State. And that probably explains the football score when they played last week, given how strong their defenses are. But as they've said, as they preach, it travels, and it's the reason why this team can go on such a long winning streak. I don't think any team is really capable of stringing 6, 7, 10, 13 games in a row without a good defense. And that's why I think it's been such an anchor for them. And I think there's also something to be said about the makeup of this team. And RJ told us this, but there isn't necessarily a star. There are a lot of exceptional players on this roster, but it isn't like there's a Derek Olsen or a Chandler Hutchison or a first-round draft pick on this roster like there has been in years past. And that's not a knock by any means. I just think it's the way that this team is set up and how versatile they are. A lot of these guys can play multiple positions. You see Emmanuel Acott, given his length, he's bringing the ball up the floor sometimes. There's a lot of versatility. We saw Mladen Armouche just throw down a ridiculous dunk in their most recent game against Wyoming. Where did this come from? So it's a very versatile team. It's going to be a tough out, but as we've said, with a lot of these teams, they've got challenging stretches. I think Friday night against Fresno State in Fresno, that's could be a coin flip type game. I know Ken Pom favors Fresno State in that one, and then they have to continue their road trip, and they've been playing a ton of road games lately. They have to continue their road trip to Laramie and play Wyoming next week, and those are 2 games that could very well be losses. They could also very well be wins. So it's just the nature of this league right now. Boise State's, I think, always going to have a fighting chance given how good their defense is. That's something that I think is way more reliable than shooting and offense. And those are 2 teams that certainly present mismatches in their own right. So I've got my eyes on those games, as you said. And I think the other competitor, as you mentioned, Colorado State, what they've been able to string together coming off of a COVID pause, I think the timing of the San Diego State game might, in hindsight, be a good thing because I think having that excusable performance, as we said on this show, it's a loss at Viejas. Obviously, the deficit was huge, but right. It's a loss. It's a quadrant 1 loss to a team that is exceptional at home. It's not the end of the world. But every game is huge because it's either you're playing a team that is fighting for top 4 position in the tournament, fighting for a quadrant 1 win. So that's pivotal. Or you're playing, hate to say it, but like maybe a bottom tier team in this league, and you can't afford to lose that game. So it's not whether it doesn't matter who you're playing at this point. It's a huge game. And I think now that we're turning the calendar to February, this is the time that a lot of these teams have been playing right. And I think last year with Boise State and Colorado State just missing the tournament.
Right.
They had some unfortunate losses down the stretch. I remember Grant Sherfield for Nevada had that huge shot against Boise State. That might have been the dagger in the committee's eyes. Like,
Yep.
those types of things can happen all the time. So I think just taking care of business as you can is such a huge deal to a lot of these teams that are trying to sneak into that tournament picture.
Yeah, it's kind of wild to think that in January and the start of February, you're already playing games that have NCAA tournament implications. But really, at this point in time, like when you're a mid-major in a conference like this, all your games are that way. Like every game on the schedule is that way because you have bad losses by the committee's eyes, and those wins that you can get are so big to be able to change your resume. So, yeah, exciting times. We will be back next week. Next week is going to be a huge week for us for the Mountain West. We have some special surprises. I don't even know if Eli knows this, but our man from All Access Network and Sports Illustrated, Kevin Sweeney, is coming into town, which is a big deal. We're going to do hopefully some great coverage around the San Diego State and Colorado State game. And then right after that, the next day, we're going up to Laramie to cover the Boise, Wyoming game. And for whatever reason, the basketball guys have me on the call, so I'll be –
oh, man.
Yeah, that's some big news. So, yeah, I'm excited about what's going on in this league. And I do think Ken Palm picking Fresno is one of those that it's easy to they're easy to sneak up on you because they're not at the top of the conference, but they are every bit a tournament team right now based on the numbers. So on the road against another tournament team, much better offensive team, not necessarily a better team than San Diego State, but yeah, just a team that's hungry to kind of get in that conversation. Whereas I think all these teams are hungry. All these teams are good. I don't want to take anything away from that or make it seem like one's better than the other, but it's just an exciting time in the Mountain West. This was a different episode. We wanted to kind of dive into the kind of picture and the outlook, and we look forward to next week having some more exciting stuff. So for all of us here at All Access and at Heat Check, if you don't know Heat Check, we don't talk about Heat Check as much on this show, but you need to know about Heat Check CBB. Go follow, go log on. You're missing out. All right.